Russian army invading Ukraine faced an unexpected resistance. The Ukrainian state does not want Russia on its territory. Ukraine, which is in great resistance, continues to push back the Russian army in many regions. The consequences of the war are huge for the Russians. Russia, which prides itself on having a large army, did not expect such a counterattack. Putin, who is dealing with the Ukrainian war on the one hand and the economic problems in Russia on the other, seems to be cornered. So how is Ukraine winning this big war? How is it resisting the huge Russian army? Let's analyze it together. In order to understand the war in Ukraine, it is necessary to know the war from the very beginning. Let us briefly recall how the war started. Ukraine was a small target for Russia, which was confident in the size of its army. Confident in its size, Russia was planning to invade Ukraine in a few days. But despite a mobilized army of 300,000 men, Russia was only able to occupy 4 regions. Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Kharkov were occupied. The Ukrainian army prevented the war from advancing from these regions. The Russian advance was stopped here. After this move, Ukraine went on the offensive and managed to push Russia back in many areas. Ukraine quickly liberated the areas taken from the Russians and prevented the destruction caused by the Russians. On the other hand, the only regional capital captured by the Russians was Kherson. But the Ukrainian army, which did not give in to the occupation, managed to take this region from the Russians as well. The Russian occupation of Kherson was now over. This put Russia in an impossible situation. All their plans were now ruined. The Ukrainian army liberated the Russian-occupied Kherson region and achieved a historic success. This victory attracted the attention of the whole world. This achievement of the Ukrainian state has already become a lauded event. In the years to come, when history books talk about this war, Ukraine's heroic deeds will be recounted at length. Ukraine's biggest support was drones. Ukrainian army drones were observing the Russian army day and night. Everything the Russian soldiers did was instantly recorded and shared with the Ukrainian defense forces. The whole course of the Ukrainian war changed thanks to drones. So how did drone technology advance so far? Were drones important enough to influence a major war? Let's take a closer look at drones. As everyone knows, drone technology has been developing day by day for many years. Drones were not noticed by camera and radar systems. For this reason, many people turned to drone technology. Not being noticed by camera and radar systems was the biggest success of drones. On the other hand, with the development of wireless access and software technologies, drones have become ready for long-distance flights. They could fly in the sky for kilometers. But the first drones were made more for observation purposes. They did not yet have an attack capability at that time. Developments in drone technology attracted the attention of many countries. Many world companies worked on this subject. World governments were pursuing this work. But drones were light vehicles. They were not suitable for missiles, so there was no attack potential yet. It could only be used for observation purposes. Seeing this situation, experts started to manufacture lighter missiles. This increased the carrying capacity of the drones. This is how the first unmanned aerial attack vehicles were produced. The most important work in the field of drones was carried out in Turkey. The work in Turkey started in 1986. Baykar company worked in this field for many years. As a result, drones called Bayraktar were developed and introduced to the whole world. Many war experts were watching the developments with astonishment. It was said that these drones would change the entire course of a possible war. Bayraktar drones could fly at very high altitudes. This gave it a great advantage, thus it could evade radars. In addition, the effectiveness of the missiles it carries was also increased. In such a situation, its combat capability was quite high. It could inflict great damage on the enemy. Bayraktar drones made in Turkey are currently not caught in any state's air defense system. It can easily carry out many operations successfully. Such power is a great advantage in wars. This is exactly where the critical threshold to Ukraine's victories began. Turkey sent hundreds of drones to Ukraine for the Ukrainian war. The Ukrainian army achieved great success against the Russian army using these drones. Many Russian positions were destroyed with the help of these drones. Russian tanks were also blown up in this way. The strongest part of the Russian army was its tanks, but the Ukrainian army has destroyed many Russian tanks using Bayraktar drones. Ukraine has so far destroyed 3,003 Russian tanks thanks to the Bayraktar drones. This is a huge financial loss for Russia. Russia has suffered a loss of millions of dollars. On the other hand, the Russian army does not have enough time to produce new tanks. Russia, which is not a member of NATO, cannot buy new tanks due to the embargoes. The Russian economy is collapsing day by day. All this prevents the Russians from using tanks in the Ukrainian war. The Ukrainian army blocked Russian tanks with Bayraktar drones. This prevented Russia from advancing. On the other hand, this success also gave the Ukrainian army a psychological advantage, because drone cameras recorded these operations instantly. These images were frequently shared in news bulletins and news sites. While the morale of the Russian army deteriorated in the face of the images, the motivation of the Ukrainian army gradually increased. The Russian people have gradually lost confidence in the war. The Russian people started to protest against the war with demonstrations, because everyone realized that the Russians were going to lose this war. The Ukrainian people knew the power and influence of the Bayraktar drones in the war. As a gesture of goodwill, they composed a special anthem for the Bayraktar. On Ukraine's Independence Day, they made a model of the Bayraktar with flowers in Kiev, a big model of the Bayraktar with flowers, a military parade, and a standing ovation for the Bayraktar drones. Even the model of Bayraktar drones was very popular with the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian army has achieved a great success against the Russian army. This success also brought a psychological advantage. On the other hand, all the countries of the world appreciated the success of Ukraine. Many people who claimed that Ukraine would lose the war regretted their words. Even the Western countries who said they would give Zelensky helicopters if he wanted to flee regretted their words. Because Ukraine was winning this war decisively, Zelensky was remembered for saying, "You must help to fight, not to escape." The images of the Russian tanks destroyed by Ukraine caused hope in the Western countries. Belief in Zelensky's success was now high. Seeing this, Western countries started to provide more military and material aid. The US, UK, France and Germany sent a lot of financial aid. This great development of drones led to a great success for Ukraine against Russia. It became clear that Russia did not actually have that very technological army. Because these drones were unmanned, even if they were caught, they did not kill any Ukrainian soldiers. However, thousands of Russian soldiers were killed when the tanks were blown up. Russia's total losses are close to 100,000 soldiers. The number of soldiers killed in the Russian army since the very beginning of the war is considered one of the biggest military losses in Russian history. Russia has not suffered such a huge loss since World War II. The Ukrainian army is now looking for new plans. Having managed to liberate Kherson, Ukraine is now planning to liberate Crimea. On the other hand, Russia is trying to develop a defense system to fight the Bayraktar drones. However, Russia's attempts are also failing. Bayraktar drone technology has changed the entire course of the war. Drone technologies were now shaping the course of war. On the other hand, Turkey gained a great reputation for its Bayraktar drones. Thanks to the success of Bayraktar in Ukraine, Turkey has sold billions of dollars worth of drones. Turkey, a great country, is on its way to becoming a great power thanks to the drone technologies. This is changing the global balance of power. How do you evaluate Bayraktar drones? Do you think drones are that important? Where do you think drone technologies will lead? Share your views with us.